The crystalline dome of the Vexillian High Council chamber refracted light across the assembled delegates, casting prismatic shadows on the polished obsidian floor. High Chancellor Zexor stood at the center of the chamber, his translucent exoskeleton glimmering with bioluminescent patterns that signaled his agitation to those versed in Vexillian emotional displays. "The human vessel has been tracked to the Altari sector," Zexor announced voice modulator, producing the perfect resonance to command attention. "Commander Elias Reed continues to defy our quarantine protocols and seeks technology we have determined is too dangerous for his species." The assembled council members chittered their agreement appendages, tapping rhythmically against their control consoles. Centuries of careful management had maintained the Vexillian Empire's technological superiority. Humans were newcomers, barely a century into their interstellar exploration, and the Vexillians had established themselves as benevolent guides, mentors, who would gradually introduce appropriate technologies to the younger races. That was the public story. In private council chambers, the truth was starker. The Vexillians suppressed technological advancement in other species to preserve their dominance. Their strategy was elegantly simple: identify promising technologies being developed by other races, declare them dangerous for galactic stability, and confiscate them. Most species complied, grateful for Vexillian protection. Commander Elias Reed was not most species. "The human must be eliminated," continued Zexor, moving to the central holographic display. He gestured with elongated fingers, bringing up an image of Reed, a human male in his 4th decade, with close-cropped dark hair, streaked with gray at the temples, sharp blue eyes, and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "He seeks the progenitor artifacts on Nix 9, which allegedly contain faster-than-light technologies beyond our current capabilities." Second Counselor Thrix raised a limb. "Is conventional military intervention not sufficient?" Zexor's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deep indigo. "The human vessel, Pathfinder, has evaded 3 of our pursuit craft. Reed was formerly a tactical officer in the Earth Defense Force. His resourcefulness is problematic." "Then we require a solution outside conventional parameters," suggested Thrix. Zexor nodded, his cranial ridges catching the light. "I propose we engage the services of a Deathworld mercenary, specifically a Zorlak hunter." A wave of discomfort rippled through the council chamber. Even the Vexillians, with their technological superiority, regarded the predatory species from high-gravity toxic worlds with caution. These species had evolved in environments so brutal that their natural abilities often surpassed engineered weapons. The Vexillians found it more prudent to employ such creatures than to antagonize them. "The contract has been prepared," Zexor continued, unmoved by his colleague's discomfort. "The hunter Kartep has been identified as available. His record is impeccable." The holographic display shifted to a new image: a massive armored being with distinctive ridge-plated skin, vestigial wings adapted into sensory organs, and eyes specifically evolved to track movement across vast distances. The Zorlak's stance, even in a still image, conveyed lethal readiness. "Let the record show," intoned Zexor, "that by unanimous council decision, the human Elias Reed has been designated a threat to galactic security. A contract is hereby issued for his termination." None objected. The fate of Commander Elias Reed was sealed. Across the galaxy, in a cavernous lair, hewn from the living rock of Zorla Prime, Kartep received the transmission. The communication orb pulsed with an incoming contract, bathing his trophy-lined walls in cold blue light. Mounted on these walls were the preserved remains of creatures from a dozen worlds, some with exoskeletons, some with multiple limbs, all once apex predators on their respective planets, until they met Kartep. The Zorlak hunter moved with surprising grace for his bulk, dragging clawed appendages across the stone floor as he approached the orb. His sensory wings trembled slightly, tasting the air molecules for information far beyond what other species could perceive. The orb projected the details of the contract, A human vessel coordinates to the swamp moon Nix-9, and a substantial payment in rare minerals. Kartep studied the image of his prey, physically unimpressive by his standards, but the accompanying tactical data suggested this human possessed cunning. That made the hunt more satisfying. Kartep touched a claw to the approval sensor, accepting the contract. The wall behind him slid open, revealing his armory, a collection of both organic and technological weapons that represented the perfect fusion of lethal biology and precision engineering. The hunter began his preparations, methodically checking equipment with the focus of a religious ritual. Each motion was economy itself, the product of genetic memory, spanning 1,000 generations of evolution on a world that killed the weak. Kartep had never failed to complete a contract. The human would be another trophy, another mark of honor for the clan. Little did the Zorlak know that this hunt would challenge not just his skills, but the very code that defined his existence. In the cold vacuum of space, the Pathfinder sliced through the darkness, its experimental stealth systems, making it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. On the bridge, Commander Elias Reed leaned forward in his command chair, studying the holographic display of the Nix-9 system. Status report. He ordered, his voice calm, but carrying the edge of someone who'd spent years making split-second decisions with lives in the balance. Lieutenant Devi, his second-in-command, looked up from her console. Her features were sharp, her black hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun, and her movements efficient. Vexillian patrol vessels have broken off pursuit, Commander. They're maintaining position at the system's edge. Reed nodded, unsurprised. They won't risk direct confrontation in a system with progenitor ruins. Too much chance of diplomatic blowback if they're caught destroying archaeological treasures. So they've given up? Asked Navigator Hayashi, his fingers dancing across the navigational array as he plotted their approach to Nix-9. Takeo Hayashi had replaced their previous navigator after an encounter with Vexillian forces near the Perseus Arm. He was younger than most of the crew, with keen eyes that missed nothing and a preternatural sense of spatial awareness. Reed's mouth quirked in a half-smile that never reached his eyes. The Vexillians don't give up, Hayashi. They adapt. If they're pulling back, it means they're changing tactics. Approaching Nix-9, announced Hayashi. Entering upper atmosphere in 3 minutes. The view screen shifted to show their destination, a moon wreathed in swirling toxic clouds, its surface a patchwork of fetid swamps and jagged rock formations. Somewhere on that hostile surface lay the ruins they sought, and potentially the technological breakthrough that could free humanity from Vexillian guidance. Specialist Yang looked up from the science station, her expression troubled. Commander, atmospheric analysis shows concentrations of sulfuric compounds and heavy metals that will corrode our environmental seals within 48 hours. Then we'll complete our mission in 47, Reed replied. He turned to Chief Rodriguez, the ship's stocky, perpetually scowling engineering officer. What's the status on Protocol Mongoose? Rodriguez ran a hand through his salt and pepper beard. Countermeasures are online. If the Vexillians send anything after us, we'll know about it. His dark eyes narrowed. You're expecting trouble, aren't you, sir? Reed stood straightening his worn field jacket. I'm always expecting trouble, Chief. That's why we're still alive. As the Pathfinder descended through the caustic atmosphere of Nix-9, a sleek, organic-looking vessel emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge. Unlike the angular crystalline aesthetics of Vexillian craft, this ship resembled a predatory animal, all muscle and purpose with sensor arrays like extended talons. Inside, Kartep initiated Huntrance, a specialized neurological state, unique to Zorlak hunters, that enhanced already formidable senses and reaction times. His consciousness expanded, merging with his ship's systems, until vessel and hunter became a single organism pursuing prey. The Zorlak ship accelerated toward Nix-9, its stealth systems engaging to mask its approach. The hunt had begun. On the surface of Nix-9, the Pathfinder settled onto a relatively stable rock outcropping amid the swamps. Reed had assembled his core team in the ship's command center, where Dr. Amara Okafor, their xenoarchaeologist, displayed a three-dimensional map of the surrounding terrain. The progenitor signal originates from an underground complex approximately 3 kilometers in this direction, she explained, highlighting a section of dense swampland. Her accent carried hints of her Nigerian heritage, and her expertise in progenitor artifacts had made her invaluable to Reed's mission. The entrance is likely concealed beneath centuries of sediment and plant growth. Reed studied the map mentally, calculating risks and resources. Environmental hazards. Besides the corrosive atmosphere, Okafor's laugh held no humor. The local fauna is primarily amphibious with highly developed toxin glands. Readings suggest at least 3 species large enough to pose a direct threat. Wonderful, muttered Rodriguez. Reed turned to his team, expression serious. I don't need to remind you what we're looking for. The progenitor outpost may contain FTL technology that doesn't rely on the navigational gates controlled by the Vexillians. If humans can develop independent faster-than-light capability, we break their monopoly on interstellar travel. And their stranglehold on Earth, added Devi. Precisely. Reed activated the tactical display. We'll deploy in 2 teams. Devi, you'll take Hayashi and Rodriguez to establish a perimeter and environmental monitoring stations. Dr. Okafor Specialist Zhang and I will proceed to the progenitor site. Sir, interrupted Zhang, her eyes fixed on her console. Sensors are detecting an atmospheric disturbance consistent with a ship breaking through the cloud layer. Reed's posture tensed. Vexillian. Zhang shook her head, confusion evident in her expression. The signature doesn't match any Vexillian vessel profile in our database. It's something else. They've hired a hunter. Reed said, the pieces falling into place. Execute Protocol Mongoose, all stations. We're no longer just explorers, we're prey. Kartep's ship settled into the toxic mists of Nix 9, its adaptive hull already synthesizing countermeasures to the corrosive atmosphere. The Zorlak hunter emerged onto the moon's surface, his armored exoskeleton sealing automatically against the hostile environment. Through specialized optical membranes, he surveyed the landscape, cataloging terrain features and potential ambush points with the efficiency of an apex predator. His sensory wings extended, gathering data far beyond visual spectrum heat signatures, pheromone traces, subtle disturbances in air currents. The human ship had landed approximately 6 kilometers away, its stealth systems adequate against conventional technology, but practically broadcasting its location to Kartep's evolved senses. Yet, something was amiss. The hunter detected an unusual pattern of small energy signatures forming a perimeter around the human vessel. Defensive measures, certainly, but arranged with a tactical sophistication that suggested preparation for a hunt rather than routine security. Kartep's mouth parts clicked in what his species considered amusement. The prey knew it was being hunted. This made the challenge worthy. He activated his biomechanical interface, connecting directly with the hunting enhancements integrated into his armor. Vexillian technology, combined with Zorlak biology, created capabilities that few species could counter. His vision shifted, overlaying tactical information onto the natural world, highlighting approaches with minimal exposure, identifying optimal attack vectors. The hunter began to move, each step calculated for both silence and efficiency. Unlike the furious predators of lesser worlds, Zorlax understood that patience was the ultimate weapon. He would observe, learn the prey's patterns, identify weaknesses. Only then would he strike. Unknown to Kartep, his movements had already triggered the first layer of Protocol Mongoose. Microscopic sensor drones disguised as native insectoid life tracked his progress through the swamps. Inside the Pathfinder, Specialist Zhang monitored the incoming data. Commander, she called over the secure comm channel. We have confirmation. Single hunter Zorlak species, moving on an intercept course with our position. Reed, already leading his team toward the progenitor site, acknowledged the report. Predictable. The Vexillians wouldn't risk direct intervention that might be traced back to them. Engage countermeasures Phase 2. Throughout the surrounding swampland, seemingly random pieces of debris and natural formations came alive, micro-emitters activating to project false heat signatures, movement patterns, and biometric data matching human life signs. Protocol Mongoose was designed to confuse sophisticated hunting senses by presenting multiple potential targets. "Do you really think this will work against a Zorlak hunter?" asked Dr. Okafor, as they carefully made their way through the fetid terrain. Her environmental suit was already showing signs of corrosion at the joints. "No," Reed replied honestly. "But it doesn't need to work, it just needs to buy us time." He checked the compact scanner strapped to his wrist. 2 more kilometers to the progenitor entrance. Once we secure the data, we can focus on survival. Back at the Pathfinder, Lieutenant Devi supervised the deployment of additional countermeasures. Hayashi status on the camouflage net. The navigator finished securing a device to a gnarled tree-like growth. Final emitter in place. If the Zorlak relies on visual confirmation, we've effectively made the ship blend into the landscape. Rodriguez snorted. If the Zorlak relies on visual confirmation, they hired the wrong hunter. Davy silenced him with a look. Stay alert. Remember, we're not trying to defeat the hunter, we're creating a problem complex enough that solving it consumes time. Deeper in the swamps, Kartep paused, his sensory wings quivering. The environment had changed subtly. Too many human signatures dispersed in patterns no living group would naturally create. His prey was deploying countermeasures attempting to confuse his hunting sense. The Zorlak made a sound deep in his throat, not quite a growl, not quite a chuckle. In his centuries of hunting across the stars, he had encountered many clever defenses. Some prey sought to hide, others to fight, a few even attempted to bargain. This human, this Commander Reed, was doing something different. He was turning the hunted into hunters. Kartep found himself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion: respect. He deactivated his primary sensory enhancements, relying instead on more primitive, unaugmented perception. Technology could be fooled. Instinct honed over evolutionary eons was more difficult to deceive. The Zorlak dropped to all fours, bringing his scent receptors closer to the ground, filtering through the moon's toxic miasma for the distinctive trace molecules that all humans shed. They're faint, but unmistakable. A directional trail leading away from the ship toward a rocky outcropping in the distance. Not random movement, but purposeful. The human commander was pursuing something specific on this hostile moon, something worth risking both Vexillian displeasure and Zorlak hunters. Kartep adjusted his course, moving with renewed purpose. Whatever Reed sought must be valuable indeed. Perhaps the true prize was not merely the human's life, but understanding his objective. The hunt grew more interesting by the moment. Reed's team had reached the coordinates of the progenitor outpost, but found only swamp and stone. Dr. Okafor moved methodically across the area, her scanner sweeping for anomalies beneath the surface. "The signal is strongest here," she insisted, tapping a seemingly ordinary patch of stone. "There should be an entrance, a door, something." Reed knelt beside her, running gloved fingers over the rock face. Centuries of mineral deposits had created a natural-looking crust, but underneath, "There's a pattern here, not random." Zhang analyzed this section. Specialist Yang approached her multi-spectrum analyzer, humming, as she passed it over the area Okafor had identified. "Detecting trace elements consistent with progenitor alloys. And there's an energy signature, extremely faint, but persistent." Reed nodded, then reached into his pack to retrieve a small device that resembled a tuning fork. "Stand back." He pressed the device against the stone and activated it. The fork emitted a specific resonance frequency that interacted with progenitor materials, a technology Reed had acquired during a previous expedition. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low vibration rumbled through the stone, and patterns of light, dim but unmistakable, began to trace geometric shapes across what had appeared to be natural rock. The stone face split open, revealing a narrow passageway descending into darkness. "Remarkable!" breathed Okafor, already advancing toward the opening. Reed caught her arm. Protocol first, Doctor. We scan, then proceed with caution. As Zhang deployed scanning probes into the passage, Reed's comm unit chirped. Commander, came Devi's tense voice. The hunter has changed course. He's bypassed our countermeasures and is moving directly toward your position. Reed's expression hardened. Estimated time of intercept? 30 minutes, possibly less. He's moving faster than our models predicted. Understood. Maintain position and be prepared for extraction on my signal. Reed turned to his team. Our timetable just got compressed. We have less than half an hour to find what we need and get out. The atmospheric degradation of our suits is accelerating, warned Zhang, checking the integrity monitor on her wrist. We have 53 minutes before critical failure. Reed gestured toward the passage. Then we have no time to waste. The three humans descended into the ancient progenitor outpost, their suit lights illuminating a corridor that hadn't been seen by living eyes in millennia. The walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift subtly as they moved, creating an unsettling optical effect. These aren't decorative, observed Okafor, recording the patterns with her specialized equipment. They're informational, a form of data storage integrated directly into the structure. Can you read it? Asked Reed, maintaining a brisk pace. Okafor shook her head. Not directly, but I'm comparing it to fragments we've documented elsewhere. There are recurring symbols that suggest this facility was related to transportation technology. The passage opened into a circular chamber, with a raised platform at its center. Unlike the corridor, this room seemed to respond to their presence, ambient lighting gradually increasing as they entered. On the platform stood a crystalline structure resembling an abstract sculpture. That's it, whispered Okafor, moving forward with reverence. A progenitor data crystal, intact. Reed approached cautiously, while Zhang established a perimeter, placing small devices at regular intervals around the chamber. What are those? Asked Okafor. Miniature disruption fields, explained Reed. They won't stop a determined attacker, but they'll provide warning and slow him down. He turned his attention to the crystal. How do we access the data? Okafor removed specialized equipment from her pack. We need to establish a compatible interface. The progenitors used quantum entanglement principles for information storage. Conventional technology can't directly read it. As Okafor worked, Reed's comm unit activated again. Commander, Devi's voice was now urgent. The hunter has accelerated. New intercept time estimate 12 minutes. Reed locked eyes with Zhang, who nodded in understanding, and readied her weapon. Dr. Okafor, you have 10 minutes. Okafor's hands moved with practiced precision over her equipment. I need at least 15 to establish a stable connection and begin data transfer. You have 10, repeated Reed. He checked his own weapon, then moved to assist Zhang in fortifying their position. The hunter will be coming through that passage. We need to make his entrance as difficult as possible. Outside, Kartep approached the exposed progenitor entrance with caution. His evolved senses detected the subtle energy emissions of active technology, both the ancient systems awakening within and the more recent human defenses being deployed. The Zorlak hunter considered his options. Direct confrontation in an unknown environment presented unnecessary risks. The humans were cornered, they would have to emerge eventually, and their environmental protection was degrading by the minute. Patience would ensure a cleaner kill. Yet, something nagged at Kartep's hunter instincts. This human Reed had consistently demonstrated atypical behavior for prey. His tactical decisions suggested he valued his objective over his own survival. Such motivation made him unpredictable. Unpredictable prey was dangerous prey. Kartep activated his most advanced adaptive camouflage, a system that mirrored not just visual aspects of the environment, but thermal, electromagnetic, and even subtle gravitic signatures. To all but the most sophisticated detection systems, he became virtually non-existent. Then, with deliberate slowness, he began to advance into the passage. Inside the progenitor chamber, Okafor worked frantically at the crystal interface. I'm establishing connection. There. Preliminary data is flowing. This is incredible. The storage density is orders of magnitude beyond anything we've seen before. Reed kept his attention divided between the passage entrance and Okafor's progress. Focus on the FTL technology. Anything related to propulsion systems or spatial manipulation. There's so much here. Okafor said, her voice tinged with academic excitement, despite the danger. Not just technical specifications, but theoretical frameworks that wait. She paused, staring at her display. This can't be right. What is it? Demanded Reed. Before she could answer, one of Zhang's perimeter devices emitted a soft alert tone. Movement in the passage. Zhang reported, raising her weapon. Minimal signature, but definitely there. Reed moved to a defensive position. Doctor, download everything you can and prepare to move. Okafor worked frantically at her console. 30 more seconds. I need 30 more seconds. In the passage, Kartep froze as he detected the alert system. Primitive by his standards, but effectively placed. The humans knew he was coming. Surprise was no longer an option. He weighed his choices, then deliberately triggered 2 more sensors at different positions, creating the impression of multiple intruders. Back in the chamber, Zhang's display showed contradictory information. Commander, I'm getting triggers from 3 different points. Either there's more than one hunter or he's playing with us, finished Reed. Doctor, time's up. Okafor disconnected her equipment from the crystal. I've got the critical data, but there's something you need to know. The progenitor's FTL system, it's not what we thought. The chamber lighting suddenly shifted, bathing everything in a pulsing amber glow. A resonant hum built around them, emanating from the walls themselves. What did you do? Reed demanded. Nothing, protested Okafor. The system must have triggered some kind of automated response to our data extraction. The passage entrance rippled with distortion as Kartep, partially visible through his adaptive camouflage, emerged into the chamber. The Zorlak hunter's massive form seemed to shift in and out of visual perception, but there was no mistaking the weapon aimed directly at Reed. For a prolonged moment, hunter and prey regarded each other across the ancient chamber. Then Reed did something that violated every protocol of survival. He lowered his weapon. I know why you're here, Reed said, his voice steady, despite facing the galaxy's most efficient predator. The Vexillians sent you to kill me because they're afraid of what I've found. Kartep remained motionless, weapon, still trained on Reed. The universal translator, integrated into his hunting gear, converted the human speech to concepts the Zorlak could understand. You believe this makes me hesitate? Kartep's voice emerged as a rumbling growl, the translator struggling with the complex harmonic components of Zorlak speech. My contract is clear. Reed took a calculated risk and stepped forward. Before you fulfill that contract, Hunter, I suggest you consider what the Vexillians haven't told you. He gestured to Okafor, who reluctantly placed her data device on the floor and slid it toward Kartep. Review this information. The progenitor technology we've discovered poses no danger to galactic stability, but it does threaten Vexillian control. Zhang and Okafor exchanged alarmed glances, but maintained their positions as Reed had instructed. The commander was gambling everything on a psychological assessment of Zorlak culture that was based on limited intelligence reports. Kartep, intrigued, despite himself, kept his weapon aimed at Reed while extending his secondary limb to retrieve the data device. With practiced efficiency, he connected it to his own systems, allowing a partitioned review of its contents while maintaining combat readiness. The chamber's amber pulsing intensified as Kartep accessed the progenitor data. What he saw challenged his understanding of the contract he'd accepted. The technology detailed in the files wasn't a weapon or a threat. It was a fundamentally different approach to faster-than-light travel, one that didn't require the massive gate structures the Vexillians had established throughout known space. More importantly, the data included evidence that the Vexillians had discovered similar technology centuries ago and deliberately suppressed it to maintain their control over interstellar transit routes. The Vexillians lied. Reed stated, simply recognizing the moment Kartep comprehended the implications. Not just to humans, but to every spacefaring species. They've presented themselves as guardians of dangerous knowledge, when they're really just protecting their monopoly. Kartep's sensory wings flared a sign of agitation. "Deception negates contract validity under Hunter's Code," he growled. "But proof requires verification beyond target claims." Reed nodded toward the data device. "That contains transmission logs from the Vexillian High Council itself. They recognized this technology years ago and classified its suppression as Priority Omega, their highest level of information control." The amber pulsing suddenly accelerated, and the resonant hum became a distinct tone. The crystalline structure at the center of the chamber began to rotate slowly. "Whatever you two are discussing," interrupted Okafor urgently, "I suggest you continue it elsewhere. This facility is activating some kind of automated sequence." Reed kept his focus on Kartep. "The Vexillians will be coming to ensure their contract is fulfilled. When they discover you know the truth, they'll eliminate you as well." He extended his hand in a universal gesture of alliance. "We can fight each other, or we can fight them." For what seemed an eternity, Kartep remained motionless. The Zorlak Hunters' cultural programming warred with newly discovered evidence. His species valued honor above all else. Contracts were sacred, but so was truth. To complete a contract based on deliberate deception violated the deeper principles of the Hunter's Code. Finally, Kartep lowered his weapon. "Verification confirmed. Contract void." His massive head inclined slightly toward Reed. "New hunt begins. Vexillians become prey." Reed allowed himself a brief smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." He turned to his team. "Dr. Okafor, is the data secure?" She nodded, patting a secondary device concealed in her suit. "Complete copy including the Vexillian suppression directives." "Good. Now we need to—" A violent tremor interrupted him as the chamber floor shifted beneath them. The crystalline structure at the center was now spinning rapidly, emitting pulses of energy that interacted with the patterns on the walls. "Time to leave," Reed ordered, gesturing toward the passage. "Move." The four figures raced toward the exit as the ancient chamber began to reconfigure itself wall sections, sliding apart to reveal machinery dormant for millennia. They had nearly reached the passage when a blinding flash of light erupted behind them, followed by a concussive force that hurled them forward into the corridor. Reed was the first to recover, helping Zhang and Okafor to their feet, while Kartep, more resistant to the blast, secured their retreat path. "Everyone intact?" Zhang ran a quick diagnostic on her suit. "Integrity down to 38%. We have less than 20 minutes before atmospheric exposure becomes critical." "The progenitor facility," gasped Okafor, looking back toward the chamber now sealed behind an energy barrier. "It's initiating a startup sequence. After all this time—" "Explanations later," Reed cut her off. "Right now, we need to reach the Pathfinder and break orbit." Kartep's sensory wings suddenly extended to their full span, a clear indication of detected threat. "Vexillian dropships," he announced. 3 vessels combat configuration descending toward human ship location. Reed activated his comm unit. "Devi, report." "Commander." His second-in-command's voice came through with interference. "We have multiple Vexillian craft entering atmosphere. They're deploying ground forces toward our position and yours. Prepare for immediate evacuation. We're coming in hot." "Understood." "Hayashi is plotting an escape vector, but we'll need to punch through their blockade." Reed turned to Kartep. "How did you get past the Vexillian patrols?" The Zorlak hunter's mouth parts arranged in what might have been a predatory smile. "Zorlak ship has signature modulator. To Vexillian sensors appears as authorized enforcement vessel. Can you access your ship remotely?" Kartep nodded already, anticipating Reed's strategy. "Can create false pursuit scenario. Draw Vexillian focus." "Do it," ordered Reed. "We need to split their forces." As they emerged from the progenitor outpost into the toxic atmosphere of Nix-9, the sky above was streaked with the contrails of descending Vexillian craft. In the distance, they could see the Pathfinder, still secure on its landing position, but surrounded by swirling mists that occasionally flashed with energy discharges, Perimeter defenses engaging. Kartep activated his neural link to his vessel, transmitting command sequences. Moments later, a sleek, predatory shape rose from its concealed position, several kilometers away, its engines flaring, as it executed a provocative attack run on the nearest Vexillian dropship. The effect was immediate. Two of the three Vexillian vessels broke off their approach to the Pathfinder to pursue the apparent threat, leaving a single ship to continue deployment of ground forces. "Your ship is sacrificing itself," observed Reed as they moved quickly through the swampland. "Ship is automated," Kartep replied. "We'll lead pursuit beyond Moon's gravity well, then initiate hyperspace jump to predetermined coordinates. Vexillians waste time, we gain advantage." Reed nodded appreciatively. Effective strategy. They continued toward the Pathfinder, using the treacherous terrain to their advantage. The toxic swamps might be hostile to human biology, but they also hampered Vexillian ground troops, whose crystalline technology was vulnerable to the corrosive atmosphere. When they were within a kilometer of the ship, Yang's scanner picked up multiple signatures. "Commander, Vexillian forces have established a perimeter. At least 12 troopers between us and the Pathfinder." Reed considered their options. His team was skilled, but direct confrontation with a superior Vexillian force, while wearing degrading environmental suits, was a losing proposition. He glanced at Kartep, whose natural armor provided better protection against Nix-9's atmosphere. A plan formed in Reed's mind, dangerous, potentially suicidal, but with one significant advantage: the Vexillians would never expect it. "Kartep," he said, "how do you feel about becoming the hunter once more?" The Zorlak's sensory wings quivered with what Reed now recognized as anticipation. "Vexillian prey. Acceptable." Reed outlined his strategy quickly. Kartep would circle around to approach the Vexillian perimeter from behind, creating a diversion that would draw off some of the forces. Meanwhile, Reed and his team would take advantage of a weakness in the Vexillian sensory systems. Their crystalline technology struggled to differentiate individual life forms in highly toxic environments due to interference patterns. "If we saturate our outer suits with swamp compounds," Reed explained, "we can temporarily confuse their bioscanners. Not for long, but hopefully enough to get us through their line and to the ship." Okafor looked dubiously at the bubbling swamp beside them. "Deliberately coating ourselves in toxic materials while our suits are already degrading seems contraindicated." "So is being captured by Vexillians," Reed countered. "Zhang, what's our suit integrity?" 22% and falling. We have approximately 8 minutes before critical exposure." Reed nodded grimly. "Then we have 7 minutes to reach the ship. Kartep, you have the most difficult role. Are you certain?" The Zorlak hunter made a dismissive gesture. "Vexillians rely on technology. I am evolution's answer to technology." He activated his adaptive camouflage, his massive form seeming to melt into the surroundings. 7 minutes. Be ready." As Kartep vanished into the swamps, Reed led his team to a position where they could observe the Vexillian perimeter. The alien troopers were methodically establishing sensor arrays and defensive positions around the Pathfinder. Their crystalline armor glinting in the diffuse light, filtering through Nix-9's toxic clouds. "Devi," Reed said into his comm unit, keeping his voice low. "Status. Shields holding, but they've deployed resonance disruptors. If they align the frequencies correctly, they'll be able to penetrate our defenses within minutes. Prepare for emergency departure. When you see an opening, don't wait for us, power up and be ready to move." "Sir, we're not leaving without—" "That's an order, Lieutenant. The data we've recovered is too important. If necessary, the Pathfinder must get that information back to Earth, with or without us." A tense silence followed then. "Understood, Commander. But we'll be ready for immediate extraction the moment you reach us." Reed turned to his team. "Time to get dirty." They slid down into the noxious swamp, carefully collecting the most caustic sludge to smear over their environmental suits. The material hissed and bubbled against the synthetic fabric, accelerating the degradation, but also creating the electromagnetic and chemical signature distortion they needed. "Suit integrity at 18%. warned Zhang, her voice tight with controlled fear. 6 minutes remaining. Reed checked his weapon, then scanned the perimeter one last time. No sign of Kartep yet, but the Zorlak hunter moved with a stealth that defied conventional detection. On my mark, he told his team. We move fast to stay low and head directly for the main airlock. Don't stop for anything. Suddenly, the night erupted with chaos on the far side of the Vexillian perimeter. Flashes of energy weapons illuminated the mist, accompanied by the distinctive, crystalline shattering sound of Vexillian armor breaking. Kartep had begun his diversion. Now, commanded Reed, and the three humans burst from their concealment, racing toward the gap in the perimeter that was forming as Vexillian troopers rushed to respond to the unexpected attack. The toxic coating worked. They passed within meters of a Vexillian sensor array, without triggering an immediate response. But their luck couldn't hold forever. Halfway to the ship, a trooper spotted them and raised the alarm. Energy blasts sizzled through the air around them. Keep moving, Reed shouted, returning fire to provide cover. Zhang Okafor straight to the ship. The two women sprinted ahead, while Reed maintained suppressing fire, deliberately drawing attention to himself. A Vexillian energy blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around, but not penetrating his suit. He recovered quickly, continuing to fire as he backed toward the Pathfinder. On the ship, Devi had seen their approach. The main airlock cycled open and Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, with a heavy weapon, adding his firepower to Reed's defense. Zhang and Okafor reached the ramp first, practically diving into the airlock. Commander, Zhang called out. 4 minutes to suit failure. Reed continued his fighting retreat now, only 30 meters from safety. The Vexillian forces were regrouping their initial confusion, giving way to coordinated response. On the far side of the perimeter, the sounds of Kartep's attack had diminished. Either the Zorlak had withdrawn or been neutralized. As if in answer to his concern, a massive shape suddenly erupted from the swamp, directly behind the closest Vexillian position. Kartep, his camouflage deactivated to conserve energy, tore through the alien formation with brutal efficiency. His natural weapons, razor-sharp claws and a secondary set of limbs, evolved specifically for combat, shredded through Vexillian armor that could withstand energy weapons. The sight of a Zorlak hunter in full battle rage was enough to create momentary hesitation among the remaining Vexillian forces, a hesitation Reed exploited to close the final distance to the Pathfinder. Kartep, he shouted over the comm channel they'd established. Disengage and head for the ship. For a heart-stopping moment, Reed thought the Zorlak might ignore the command lost in the primal fury of combat. Then, Kartep disengaged with predatory grace, leaping back into the swamp mists, only to emerge running in a direct line toward the Pathfinder. Reed reached the airlock, Rodriguez pulling him inside as Devi's voice came over the ship-wide comm. Engines online, preparing for emergency launch. Wait, Reed ordered, standing at the bottom of the ramp. Kartep is incoming. The Zorlak hunter closed the distance with astonishing speed, pursued by concentrated Vexillian fire. Energy blasts carved furrows in the swamp around him, but his erratic movement pattern made him difficult to target effectively. 20 meters from the ship, a Vexillian blast finally connected, catching Kartep in mid-stride. The hunter stumbled his momentum, carrying him forward, even as his massive body twisted in pain. Without hesitation, Reed raced back down the ramp, ignoring Devi's shouts of protest. His suit integrity was now critical, the toxic atmosphere of Nix-9 beginning to seep through compromised sections. But he refused to leave an ally behind, especially one who had violated his own contract to side with them. He reached Kartep, who was struggling to rise, a viscous fluid Reed assumed was blood, seeping from a wound in his side. "Can you move?" Reed demanded, already positioning himself to support the much larger being. Kartep's sensory wings quivered with what might have been surprise. "Human helps hunter unexpected." "We made a deal," Reed replied, straining under the Zorlak's weight as they moved toward the ship. "I don't break deals with allies." Together, They staggered up the ramp as the Vexillian forces regrouped for a final assault. The moment they cleared the threshold, Rodriguez slammed the airlock controls. "Go!" Reed shouted toward the bridge. "Maximum thrust now." The Pathfinder shuddered as its engines engaged, lifting the ship from the toxic surface of Nix 9, with steadily building acceleration. On the external monitors, they could see Vexillian energy weapons tracking their ascent, but the ship's defensive systems were deflecting the worst of the barrage. In the decontamination chamber, connected to the airlock, Reed helped Kartep onto a reinforced bench, designed for cargo rather than passengers. The Zorlak hunter's wound was severe, but not immediately life-threatening, due to his species' remarkable regenerative capabilities. "My ship!" Kartep growled, his translator struggling with the pain inflection in his voice. "Already gone," Reed confirmed, checking the tactical display. It led the Vexillian pursuit craft on quite a chase before jumping to hyperspace. Effective diversion. "We'll rendezvous at programmed coordinates. 3 standard cycles." Reed nodded, then braced himself as the Pathfinder executed a sharp, evasive maneuver. "First, we need to survive long enough to meet it." The ship accelerated through Nix 9's upper atmosphere sensor arrays, tracking the Vexillian vessels, now in pursuit. Hayashi's voice came over the comm. "Commander, they're deploying a blockade pattern ahead. 3 heavy cruisers forming a triangulation net." Reed made his way to the bridge, leaving Kartep in the capable hands of their medical systems. The main view screen displayed the tactical situation, their small vessel ascending toward a carefully positioned net of Vexillian warships. "Options?" he asked, taking his command chair. Hayashi's fingers danced across his console. "Standard escape vectors all blocked. They've anticipated our most logical routes." "Then we use an illogical one." Reed turned to Devi. "What's the status of that progenitor data, Lieutenant?" Devi raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Okafor is still analyzing, but the preliminary findings suggest—" She stopped, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You want to attempt an untested FTL methodology against a Vexillian blockade." "I want to use their greatest fear against them," Reed confirmed. He activated the ship-wide comm. "Dr. Okafor, report to the bridge immediately. Bring everything you've got on the progenitor drive principles." Okafor arrived moments later, still removing the last of her contaminated environmental suit. "Commander, the data we recovered is revolutionary, but it's theoretical. We don't have the hardware configuration to—" "We don't need a perfect implementation," interrupted Reed. "We just need enough to create a convincing energy signature." He gestured to the display, showing the approaching Vexillian cruisers. "They believe the progenitor technology is dangerous. Let's show them exactly what they're afraid of." Understanding lit Okafor's features. "A bluff." "Precisely. Can you modify our existing drive system to emit an energy pattern consistent with the progenitor theoretical model? Something that would register on Vexillian sensors as a potential FTL activation." Okafor considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes, but it would require rerouting power from several critical systems, including shields. We'd be vulnerable." "For how long?" 3 minutes to implement the modifications, then perhaps 30 seconds of convincing emissions before our systems would start to destabilize. Reed turned to Rodriguez. "Chief." The engineer stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Risky. Very risky. But it might work." He stood. "I'll help the doctor make the necessary adjustments. Jang, I'll need your assistance as well." As they hurried to engineering, Reed studied the tactical display. The Vexillian cruisers were adjusting their formation, tightening the net as the Pathfinder approached. Their caution was evident. Rather than simply destroying the human vessel, they were positioning to capture it intact, presumably to recover both the crew and any progenitor data. "They're preparing tractor beams," reported Hayashi. 90 seconds until we're in range." Reed opened a channel to engineering. "Status." "Almost there," came Okafor's voice, strained with concentration. "The emitter array is aligned, but we're having trouble with the power regulation. If we push too much energy through these circuits—" "We need another minute," interrupted Rodriguez. Reed grimaced. We don't have another minute, he turned to Devi. Prepare to divert all available power to the forward shields. We're going to have to punch through their line. Sir, Devi, responded, her expression grave. Even with maximum shield concentration, a direct confrontation with 3 cruisers will be suicidal, yes. Reed's mouth set in a determined line. But if we can maintain our momentum until Dr. Okafor's modifications are ready, we might create enough confusion to slip past them. Before Devi could respond, a new transmission came through on a Vexillian command frequency the Pathfinder shouldn't have been able to access. The bridge speakers emitted a familiar rumbling growl. Kartep. Hunter to prey ship. Am accessing Vexillian tactical net through neural implant. Can disrupt formation coordination for a brief interval. Reed exchanged a surprised look with Devi. Kartep, I thought you were in medical recovery. Zorlak physiology adapts. Survival prioritizes function over comfort. There was a pause, then. Vexillian cruisers utilize synchronized defensive algorithms, introducing false data now. On the tactical display, one of the Vexillian cruisers suddenly broke formation, its movements becoming erratic. A moment later, the other 2 vessels also began adjusting their positions, apparently responding to phantom threats only they could detect. He's feeding them false sensor data, realized Devi, making each cruiser think the others are repositioning. Reed seized the opportunity. Hayashi, plot a course through that gap that's forming. Full power to engines. The Pathfinder surged forward, accelerating toward the momentary weakness in the Vexillian blockade. On the comm, Okafor's voice came through with renewed urgency. Modifications complete. Ready to initiate on your command. Stand by, ordered Reed, watching as the gap between Vexillian cruisers narrowed. The Pathfinder was committed now, racing toward what might be their only chance at escape. Tractor beams powering up, warned Hayashi. They've realized the coordination error, attempting to re-establish formation. Reed's hand hovered over the tactical control. Dr. Okafor, initiate the progenitor signature now. Throughout the ship, lighting dimmed as power diverted to the modified drive system. For a terrifying moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Pathfinder began to vibrate with an unfamiliar harmonic resonance. On the external sensors, a distinctive energy pattern formed around the vessel, a pulsing geometric configuration that exactly matched the patterns they'd observed in the progenitor facility. The effect on the Vexillian cruisers was immediate and dramatic. All 3 vessels suddenly broke formation, increasing distance not just from the Pathfinder, but from each other as well. They're backing off, said Devi, surprise evident in her voice. They're actually afraid of what this technology might do. Reed allowed himself a tight smile. Hayashi, take us through that gap at maximum velocity. Once we're clear, plot an immediate jump to the rendezvous coordinates Kartep provided. The Pathfinder shot through the opening in the Vexillian formation, its modified drive creating a wake of exotic particles that further confused the alien sensors. By the time the Vexillian commanders realized they'd been deceived, the human vessel was beyond effective tractor beam range. Preparing for hyperspace jump, announced Hayashi, his fingers a blur across the navigational interface. Coordinates locked. Reed opened the ship-wide comm. All hands secure for emergency transition. The stars on the view screen elongated as the Pathfinder escaped into hyperspace, leaving the Vexillian blockade and the toxic moon of Nix 9 behind. In the aftermath of their narrow escape, the crew of the Pathfinder gathered in the ship's conference room. The data they'd recovered from the progenitor outpost was displayed on the main screen, complex equations and theoretical models that promised to revolutionize faster-than-light travel. The implications are profound. Dr. Okafor was explaining her earlier exhaustion, replaced by scholarly enthusiasm. The progenitors developed an approach to FTL that doesn't require fixed gates or navigational beacons. Instead, it creates a localized phase shift in the vessel itself, allowing it to slip between dimensional boundaries without disrupting surrounding space. Which is why the Vexillians suppress this knowledge, added Reed. Their entire economic and political structure is built around controlling the gate network, If ships could independently transition to FTL without their infrastructure, their empire would collapse, finished Devi. Kartep, who had joined them despite his injuries, made a rumbling sound that the translator interpreted as agreement. Vexillians maintain power through controlled access. New technology threatens control. Reed nodded. And now, we have proof not just of the alternative FTL methodology, but of the Vexillian suppression program. He turned to Okafor. How quickly can we adapt this technology to the Pathfinder? The scientist considered. The theoretical framework is solid, but practical implementation will require significant engineering work. With Rodriguez's expertise, perhaps 3 weeks to a functional prototype, another 2 for safety testing. We don't have 5 weeks, Reed said grimly. The Vexillians know what we've discovered. They'll bring their full resources to bear on finding us before we can disseminate this information. Then we divide the task, suggested Young. The data itself needs to reach Earth immediately. Even if they capture us, the knowledge will be preserved. Reed considered this strategy. We need a secure transmission method. The Vexillians monitor all standard communication channels. My ship, Kartep interjected. Zorlak communication uses quantum entanglement pairs undetectable by Vexillian technology. When we rendezvous, can transmit data through Hunter network. His sensory wings flexed slightly. Hunters dislike Vexillian control of movement, would assist in distributing knowledge. The humans exchanged surprised glances. Devi was the first to speak. You're proposing an alliance between humans and Zorlak hunters, beyond just our immediate situation. Kartep's massive head inclined in what they now recognized as affirmation. Hunters respect worthy adversaries. Humans have proven worthy. Vexillians have proven dishonest. Hunter's choice is clear. Reed studied the Zorlak for a long moment, then extended his hand as he had on Nix 9. An alliance, then. Together, we change the balance of power in this quadrant. Kartep extended his primary limb, carefully wrapping clawed digits around Reed's forearm in the formal hunter's greeting of equals. Together we hunt. 3 days later, the Pathfinder rendezvoused with Kartep's automated vessel at the coordinates he had programmed. In the observation lounge, Reed stood beside the Zorlak hunter, watching as the predatory shape of the alien craft matched velocity with their ship. Your injuries have healed well, Reed observed, noting how the Zorlak moved with his original fluid grace, no trace remaining of the wound sustained on Nix 9. Zorlak physiology prioritizes healing. Evolutionary advantage on Deathworld. Kartep's sensory wings extended slightly, tasting the recycled air of the human vessel. Your ship requires maintenance. Atmosphere filtration degrading. Reed smiled. Nothing escaped a hunter's senses. We've been pushing the systems hard. Once we've transmitted the progenitor data, we'll need to find a secure location for repairs and to begin implementing the technology. Hunter Network knows such places, worlds beyond Vexillian monitoring stations in dimensional shadow spaces. That would be extremely helpful. The two stood in companionable silence for a moment, an apex predator and a human commander united by circumstance, yet finding unexpected common ground. The Vexillians believed they could maintain control by setting predator against prey, Reed mused. They never considered we might recognize a shared interest stronger than their manipulation. Kartep made the rumbling sound that signified agreement. Vexillians understand politics, do not understand hunters. The Zorlak turned his formidable gaze on Reed. Or humans. Both adapt. Both survive where others fail. The docking procedure completed with a gentle shudder through the Pathfinder's hull. Soon, the progenitor data would be transmitted through the Hunter network, spreading to key scientific outposts throughout the galaxy. The Vexillian monopoly on FTL travel would begin its inevitable collapse. In the toxic swamps of Nix 9 on a ridge overlooking the now sealed progenitor outpost, 2 figures stood side by side. Around them, the caustic atmosphere swirled in hypnotic patterns, occasionally illuminated by energy discharges from the ancient facility, below a facility that had awakened after millennia of dormancy and was now beginning a mysterious, automated sequence. They told the apex predator to kill the human. Kartep rumbled, his sensory wings extended to their full span, tasting the toxic winds. They did not understand that true predators choose their own prey. Beside him, Reed nodded, his environmental suit, newly reinforced against Nix-9's hostile elements. And now, the hunters become allies, and the manipulators become the hunted. Below them, Vexillian research teams worked frantically to understand the activated progenitor systems, unaware that the truly valuable data was already spreading beyond their reach. Soon, the careful structures of control they had maintained for centuries would begin to crumble. The human commander and the Zorlak hunter turned away from the scene, moving in perfect synchronization toward their waiting ships. The galaxy was about to change, and they would be at the vanguard of that transformation. Behind them, the ancient progenitor facility pulsed with increasing power, a beacon signaling the end of one era and the beginning of another.